Welcome back everyone to the Hello World Guide. This is another episode of the C programming series, and in this video we are going to learn about dynamic memory allocation. So let's consider a very small example in which sometimes of course we can create variables as many as we like in our program, and those are stored within our program's actual memory, and then when we use our program, then we have access to those variables as much as we want. However, sometimes we want to a lot of times we want to use use something that size we don't whose size we don't know, or use something that can be like multiple things. We can we might want to have a dynamically sized array or something like that, or something the size of which is to be determined at runtime, or we just need to allocate resources on runtime. So how do we do that? How do we ask the our operating system to give us some memory at runtime? Well, for that, C++ has a few functions. So let's go ahead and understand that in this video. Actually, use the memory allocation function, we need to include the stdlib or standard library.header file. And now we are going to go under the main function, and we are going to create an integer called x. And then this integer might be used to store the memory we create, but the memory we create is actually returned as a pointer to the memory, so we are going to create an integer pointer instead. And we can use the function malloc for memory alloc to actually allocate the memory, and this function expects the actual number of bytes that we want. So we have to literally give it the number or the amount of memory we want in bytes. Now we only want to allocate one integer, which means we want to tell it how many bytes an integer has, and we might not know that always because it can change on different computers. So we can use a built-in operator of C called sizeof, and this sizeof operator, we can pass it either a variable or a type, and it will give us the number of bytes of that type in that. And this is effectively going to allocate enough memory at runtime. This memory will not be included in the actual program file, and it will be only allocated when we actually need it, and this should actually create the memory. And if I go ahead and do something like print and say enter number of bytes to allocate, we can actually take these bytes from the user as well, just to show you. And I can go ahead and scan like this, and yeah, just like that. So we scan the bytes, and now we go ahead and say memory allocate, and we just say bytes, and we are not actually storing this anywhere, but it will actually effectively allocate the memory. So allow me to actually first let me clear this first before I go ahead and run a.exe like that, and it should ask us the number of bytes to allocate, and I can say, so for example, something like 32, and it will have allocated 32 bytes. Now of course the program exits immediately after, which means those bytes don't actually do anything. But one thing we can do, which is very interesting, is that we can also free this memory. So once we are done using it, we might want to use this memory. So we are going to of course use this memory for various tasks depending on what we want to do. And after we have done that, we can go ahead and free this memory by using the free function. So just say free, and this actually expects a pointer. So we can use this free to give a pointer, and we can use that pointer will basically give that memory back to the operating system, so that it can allocate it to some other program. So we can pass it a pointer which we want to free that memory. So this is pretty simple, and this is basically how all of these works. And one very interesting use case of it might be to create like a string reader, because strings in C can get really complicated. And by the way, we can use pointers as array as well, because an array is just a pointer actually pointing. An array is a pointer that points to the first element of the array, and we can use a pointer as an array as well. So we can go ahead and say something like I don't know, we can go ahead and say something like, actually let's go ahead and say enter a number of integers to allocate. And now what we will do is we will say bytes multiplied by size of integer. What that will do essentially is that it will allow us to create enough memory for this number of integers. And what we can do then is we can go ahead and for example store this in an integer pointer. Let's just call it I don't know, a, and then we can set it to this. And what this will do is that now this is actually an array of like as many elements as the user desired, and we can access these elements just like normally. So C gives you very direct control over memory. This comes at the expense of security, so we want to make sure that we don't actually use any memory that has not been allocated. So right now I'm just calling the 51 without actually checking if the bytes that the user entered were 50. So we want to make sure that we don't do anything wrong here. Anyways, this is pretty much it for this video. This was just a short introduction to how memory allocation works. In the next video we'll actually learn some practical use cases by creating a system to effectively input string variables from the user, like ask the user to input their name or anything like that. So I'll see you in the next one. Make sure to like and subscribe and share this video with as many people as you can, and I will see you in the next one, and bye.